Listen for a moment last and hear me tell my tale. How o'er the seas from England's shore I was condemned to sail. The jury found me guilty, sir, and said the judge, said he, for life, Jim Jones, I sentence you across the stormy sea.
Welcome to another Newcastle Family History Society podcast. The Newcastle Family History Society, located on Awabakal land in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia, provides support for those interested in family history. Mel Woodford's series, Felonious Females, recounts the lives of some of the convict women who were sent to Newcastle and the Hunter Valley in the 1800s. In this episode, Mel chats with member Robyn Jeffriess about Sophia Lovell's life journey from her convict origins to that of a respected figure in her community.
Sophia Lovell arrived in New South Wales aboard the convict transport Diana in May of 1833. Robyn, you've done a lot of research on Sophia. Can you tell us how she came to be transported?
Like other convicts, male and female, Sophia Lovell found herself on her way to a foreign country because she came before the courts in England. Her crime was stealing reaping hooks. These were curved-bladed implements for cutting things such as grass and other crops. Why would these be important enough for transportation? She was convicted at Cambridge, Isle of Ely, Court of Sessions on the 17th of October, 1832.
What do we know about Sophia's early life?
Well, Sophia was from Peterborough, Isle of Ely, Cambridgeshire. She was born there on the 12th of February 1812. This is according to the date on her headstone. At the time of her conviction, she was said to be 21 years, but it does appear she was only 20. She was working as a servant in a public house.
What was the voyage of the Diana like for the female convicts on board?
Sophia was one of 100 female convicts who had come from various prisons. They were received by the surgeon, James Ellis, on the ship Diana on the 14th of November 1832 at Woolwich, along with 20 settlers. This is including children. The ship didn't have a good start. It began the journey to New South Wales on the 11th of December 1832, but was delayed by winds till the 20th. Then another delay at Falmouth on the 29th of December. It was finally on the way on the 3rd of January 1833. It wouldn't have been pleasant on board during these delays, but many other convicts spent years on hulks awaiting transportation. It was said to be damp, foggy, and extremely boisterous at the start, causing catarrh, inflammations, and a great deal of seasickness. After receiving favourable winds, they were almost at the equator by the 15th of February 1833. But sadly, one female patient was lost. Constipation became quite a problem, with prisoners constantly needing medicine. Then 2 prisoners were showing signs of scurvy. Surgeon Ellis appears to be a more caring person than some who have been written about. After 80 days at sea, it was decided to call in at the Cape of Good Hope to replenish medicines, fresh meat, fruit and vegetables. The passengers were probably grateful as their health improved and there were no more traces of scurvy. Another idea of the surgeon was to have the female prisoners employed in the making of their own clothes, promoting good order. To me, the women and girls probably appreciated having something to do while on board. The worst of the prisoners were locked up at night, and another punishment the women dreaded was the shaving of their heads. Conditions were certainly harsh. Sophia was on the sick list twice with a sexually transmitted disease, not uncommon, and many women did become pregnant.
The women were mustered on board the ship before they landed. What details do we learn about Sophia?
The Diana arrived in Sydney on the 25th of May 1833 with Sophia on board. It was stated she had had no education, also no prior convictions, and she was only 5'3.5" tall. She had a ruddy complexion with brown hair and chestnut-coloured eyes. Quite descriptive. But it seems like she hadn't had things easy, as she had lost part of her front tooth in the upper jaw and she was carrying scars, one from a lancet inside the right elbow. On checking, a lancet was usually a two-sided cutting implement to open veins or boils.
Sophia spent some time at the Parramatta Female Factory awaiting assignment. What can you tell us about her time there?
Whether from her arrival or not, Sophia is listed on female convicts who spent time at Parramatta Female Factory. Again, not a pleasant place to be. Here the women were graded. Third-class women had their heads shaved, so degrading and something they dreaded. They received poorer quality clothing and rations than other women. These women were forced to cart and break stone brought in for that purpose. Second-class women were usually pregnant or nursing mothers, though some who committed minor crimes were here as well, while first class was for convict women who were suitable for placement in private assignment. Sophia did spend time in Newcastle Jail, which had been closed as a convict establishment, but after the riots at the Parramatta Female Factory in 1831, it was reopened to again receive women from Parramatta, along with consignments of newly arrived convicts who were regularly sent to Newcastle for assignment among the settlers of the Hunter Valley.
Soon Sophia met Alexander Munro. Can you tell us a little bit about Alexander?
Aged 26 years and on a bond, Sophia met Alexander Munro, aged 25, also a convict. The connection both of them had with the Presbyterian religion in Singleton was probably how they met. Much is written about Alexander, though him being a convict is omitted from historical writings. He was born in Ardersier in the Scottish Highlands, east of Inverness, on the 18th of July 1812. He was the son of George Munro and Isabel Main. After the death of his father, the family moved to Inverness, and this is where Alexander got into trouble. In 1829, along with two other boys, he was found guilty of robbing a grocery store. He was sentenced at Inverness to be transported to Australia on the ship York on the 3rd of September 1829 for 7 years. Prior to this, his occupation was a farm boy. He was 5'3.5" tall and could read and write. He was assigned to John Brown, a settler of Patrick Plains.
Alexander and Sophia applied for permission to marry. Can you tell us anything about their early life together?
Well, Alexander gained his Certificate of Freedom in 1836, and he received permission to marry Sophia Lovell on the 6th of July 1838. Their marriage took place at Whittingham on the 23rd of July 1838 in the Presbyterian faith by the Reverend Irving Hetherington, first Presbyterian minister inducted in 1837. Unfortunately, Sophia and Alexander were unable to have children of their own, possibly because of the disease Sophia contracted during transportation. In 1840, they unofficially adopted a 4-year-old daughter, Harriet. This came about after the death of Harriet's mother in tragic circumstances. Harriet was the daughter of another female convict, Catherine Kent, who arrived in New South Wales on the 17th of September 1834 on board the Andromeda, aged 16 years. She was obviously pregnant on arrival, as Harriet was born on the 26th of March 1835. Catherine was in and out of prison and was assigned to many different people, the last person being John Brown of Patrick Plains, and I suspect she had Harriet with her then. She was sent from there back to Newcastle Jail, where she was released on the 24th of August 1835, aged 17 years, to marry Thomas Phillips, 29, of Darlington, Singleton, at Christchurch Cathedral on the same day.
Alexander's assignment with John Brown, a settler of Patrick Plains, may well have given him the guidance and opportunities he needed to begin in business.
It has been written Alexander Munro attributed his financial and business successes to the guidance of John Brown during his period of assignment with him. These two men seem to have had a good relationship, and I suspect when Catherine Kent Phillips died tragically, leaving Harriet, along with 2 other children born as Phillips, Alexander and Sophia happily took and reared Harriet as their own, with Alexander and Catherine possibly knowing each other because of their assignments with John Brown. Alexander started buying, selling and leasing land around Singleton, then bought a horse and cart hauling goods between Singleton and Morpeth. The mail service from Singleton was started by Alexander. In 1841, he was running Governor Burke Hotel at the Crossing. Later this hotel was named the Fitzroy. During this time, the Fitzroy Hotel was used for political meetings, church meetings. Also concerts and banquets were held in the Long Room. He bought the Sir Thomas Mitchell Inn in George Street in the 1840s, which was later named the Caledonian Hotel.
Sophia and Alexander entertained many important people.
Well, it would be assumed Sophia was present and part of the welcoming party during the visit to a number of Singleton establishments, including Alexander's Governor Burke Hotel, by Governor Sir Charles Fitzroy in February 1847. Later, a dinner was held for the Governor at Mr. Ledingham's Surveyor General Inn, with Alexander providing the dinner. A number of years later, in February 1868, when Alexander was Mayor of Singleton, Alexander, and it would be assumed Sophia, greeted the Duke of Edinburgh when he visited Singleton in the Hunter. During this tour, there was an assassination attempt on the Duke, causing Alexander to write 2 letters of indignation to the paper, one on behalf of the people of Singleton.
Their adopted daughter Harriet married in late 1853 and blessed them with 7 grandchildren, the first named Alexander Munro Cousins.
It has been written that Sophia and Alexander adored this daughter, Harriet, so it would probably have been a very pleasant occasion when Harriet Munro married Walter Cousins at East Maitland on the 28th of October 1853. From this marriage, Sophia was blessed with a number of grandchildren. Alexander Munro Cousins, born 1854, Walter Young Cousins, born 1856, Sarah, 1857 to 1872, died at 15 years. Charles, born and died 1859, Harriet, born 1860, Edward, born 1862, and died in 1879 in a horse riding accident at 16 years. And Isabella, born 1866 and died 1867. It would be hoped Sophia had a lovely life with her grandchildren, though there would have been some sadness for the loss of some of these children. Great sadness was part of Sophia and Alexander's lives again when they lost their daughter Harriet to TB at only 37 years on the 14th of June 1873. According to the Maitland Mercury, Harriet's funeral left the residence of Mr. A. Munro, George Street, Singleton, for Glenridding Cemetery.
They were community-minded people and supported good causes.
Alexander Munro was very community-minded and did so much for the people of Singleton, which is well documented in the newspapers. Sophia obviously was involved in the community as well. As I found in newspapers, she donated 10 and 6 to the Tamworth Benevolent Society, along with Alexander, in March 1853. She also donated to the Donegal Relief Fund in July 1858. This fund began when Catholic clergyman Archdeacon John McEnroe convened a public meeting in Sydney, May 1858, using the donations received to bring to Australia some of the people living in this remote Irish rural area. The first of the Donegal Relief Fund migrants arrived in Sydney on the 24th of May 1859. In 1855, Alexander hosted a ball at his Caledonian Hotel for the Loyal Lodge of Fidelity, one of his beneficiaries. Sophia, possibly with Alexander, attended many dinners and balls mentioned in the newspapers. Alexander Munro became the first mayor of Singleton in 1866 and held that position till 1869. With this, it is expected Sophia would have supported Alexander with many of the public duties this entailed. He also arranged the supply of gas to Singleton at his own expense. gave donations for a number of buildings in Singleton, one being the maternity ward for unfortunate females in the hospital, another land for the Presbyterian Church. Sadly, the fountain horse trough he had constructed in Scotland and imported was not erected till after both his and Sophia's deaths. As reported in the Maitland Mercury in 1878, a banquet was held in his honour prior to both Sophia and his departure to visit Europe, including a pleasant return to his old country of Scotland. On their return, Alexander presented a banner he had organised while overseas to the Loyal Fidelity Lodge for the event of their 30th anniversary.
Sophia and Alexander passed away within 6 months of each other in 1889.
Sadly, Sophia lost her partner Alexander Munro at their residence, Ardesia House, named after his Scottish hometown and situated near Singleton, aged 76, on the 26th of January 1889. While still living at Ardesia House, Sophia joined Alexander on the 25th of July 1889, aged 77 years. From her obituary in the Singleton Argus, Sophia had been in failing health. She lived quietly and was of quiet disposition, having many good qualities.
A young girl from Cambridgeshire in England travelled to the other side of the world to marry a fellow convict who would later become the mayor of Singleton, with Sophia by his side. Their 50-year marriage was said to be a happy one, and they now rest together beneath a tall granite monument brought from Scotland for the purpose. The inscription reads, "After life's fitful fever, they sleep well."
Thank you, Mel and Robyn. Another absorbing story about one of our convict women who came to the Hunter. With more stories to come in this fascinating series, be sure you tune in again or follow us on Newcastle Family History Society podcasts.
Listen for a moment last and hear me tell my tale. How o'er the seas from England